early afternoon. So I'll wait just a little bit for people to jump on. So let me know before we get started where you're listening from. So give me the city where you're listening from, and give me a thumbs up if you are ready for this quarantine to be over. All right, guys. So for today, I want to give you a different perspective on immunity, okay? So I'm going to go over with you today the five tests that your doctor hasn't run that can reveal how your immune system is actually functioning, okay? And so these are some tests. If you are a current Wellness Way patient, go ahead and grab your lab tests if you have them, because each one of these tests are going to leave clues as far as how your immune system is actually functioning. So one of the things that we really need to talk about, and that's not being talked about right now with this pandemic or with this health crisis, is that everybody is talking about how you need to avoid a virus. So how you need to protect yourself from some virus, and all the different rules and all the different regulations are really just talking about how to avoid a virus or how to decrease your viral load. But there are no news organizations, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, it doesn't matter, that none of them are actually talking about this perspective. The only thing that they're talking about is how you can avoid a virus or how you can try to decrease your viral load. But I'm going to tell you something, is that viruses are all around us. They're everywhere. They're all around you. Bacteria, virus, fungus, doesn't name it, it's all around us. So I'm going to give you a different perspective and how you can actually use lab tests in order to see, do I need to fear this virus, or is my immune system actually sufficient? Okay. So before we get started, let me say hi to a couple of people. So Amber, how are you? Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Thermanda, good to see you. Nancy, how are you? Nancy, I hope you are enjoying your workouts at home during quarantine. So it's been a pleasure seeing your pictures. You look extremely excited afterwards. So let's talk about the 5 tests that can reveal your immune system function, okay? Now listen, before I do this, let me preface this, all right? Because just like I said before, the news organizations are talking about a big bad virus, and you need to do everything that you can to try to protect yourself. So you need to practice social distancing, get 6 feet away from everybody. You need to be wearing a mask, and some of the masks that I've seen, let me tell you something, they aren't protecting you. You need to stay away from people. You need to wash your hands. You need to use copious amounts of hand sanitizer. You need to not touch anything. You need to sanitize everything. And not to say that there's not any value with doing that, but I'm going to tell you is that you can't live your life, your whole life, living the way that our United States is living right now. If I can get an amen, give me a thumbs up for that. So everyone's talking about how to decrease your viral load. And instead, what I say is why not, instead of trying to avoid everything, why not just make sure your immune system is sufficient? Because if your immune system is sufficient, then you can handle any virus, because these viruses are all around us. Now you see on here, you see a picture of a snowflake, and let me preface this, because we live in a generation right now, and this is probably might not get taken very well by some people, but we live in the snowflake generation, okay? So everyone complains, they say, these kids today, they're snowflakes, they're weak, they're weak-minded, they don't stick to things, they're not mentally tough, they don't like to be challenged, they don't like to work, they don't like to exercise, they just want to sit and do nothing. Here's the thing though, is I agree with you, but the reason why these kids are that way is that it's not their fault. It's the parents' fault. because the parents have shielded children from heartache. They've shielded their children from having a loss. They've shielded their children from having disappointment. And when they go into the real world, they can't handle it because they haven't been dripped slowly challenges and disappointment. And so finally, when they become adults, they are snowflakes. They mentally cannot handle the stressors and the rigors of everyday life. But let me give you a parallel when it comes to our immune systems. If you are never challenging your immune system will never grow and it will never mature. So the problem is today is we have people over the last 40 or 50 years whose immune systems has never been challenged. Immune systems have never been exposed. And in fact, we've had this experiment where we have literally tried to rid ourselves of bacteria and viruses. And in the meantime, we're growing up with very weak and very immature immune systems that are much like a snowflake. And whose fault is it? It's our fault, because we're trying to we're trying to win a war that we'll never win. We'll never be able to win. So is your immune system, is it a snowflake? Now, that doesn't mean that your immune system should be challenged. I challenge my children's immune system. That doesn't mean that they never get sick. They do, in fact, get sick. They have to endure a little bit of pain. They have to endure fevers. They have to endure coughs. And all of those things are the body's expression of how to produce a normal and proper immune system response. And if we can expose them to as much as possible, then what we do is we begin raising their immune system. Our immune systems will develop memory. Our immune systems will develop sufficiency. It will develop efficiency so that it can handle any viral load or it can handle a bacterial load that comes their way. So we have to start looking at immunity from a different perspective. That doesn't mean that there are people who have very weak immune systems. But what we need to do for those people is we need to make sure that we are testing them and that we are getting their lifestyle in order so that their immune systems are just as sufficient as a healthy person as well. So these are the two battles, guys. Decrease your viral load. And that's what the only thing, that's the plan. The plan is to try to isolate your cells and try to decrease your viral load. Does that mean that that's something that you should never do? No, but it's not the only thing that you should do. And in fact, it's not the best strategy. And you will see over the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, you're going to see that this has not been the best strategy. So I want you to think about it, because for those of you who are freaking out about this virus, for those of you who are how do I say it, yelling at other people because they're not properly socially distancing, I want to ask you a question. When this is all said and done, what next? So what's next? Where do we go from here? Do we now practice the same way, trying to avoid every single viral exposure? Or do we say we can never get rid of the viruses? Let's do number two. And number two is, why don't we have an immune system that is sufficient? Why don't we have an immune system that we can expose and that it can handle any single infection that's out there? Because there are things and there are people out there who, in fact, do have an extremely insufficient immune system. And these are the people that should be afraid of COVID-19. But they should also be afraid of other viruses like the flu or Epstein-Barr virus. All of these other different viruses. It doesn't matter what virus it is. It's any type of viral infection. So we need to start working on having a sufficient immune system. And I hope that makes sense to you. Now, here's the 5 tests that I want to go over. So if you have had any one of these tests, I want to give you a different perspective on each one of these tests and how each one of these tests can leave clues as far as how this immune system is actually functioning. So if you look at this one, this is a food allergy test. So this is an IgG. We also do IgE, food allergy testing. Now here's what's interesting is when people look at a food allergy test, Usually the only thing, and this includes a lot of functional medicine doctors and nutritionists and things like that, they look at it and they say, well, these are the foods that you're having an allergy to, just avoid it, and everything will be just fine. But when we look at a food allergy test, we look at it from a very different perspective. In fact, the first thing that I look at when I look at a food allergy test is I ask the question, how many foods are they reacting to? See, the thing is that if you see someone, and in fact, when you look at this test right here, the reason why I'm showing this to you is that this is a patient who has chronic bronchitis every single winter, goes on 1, 2, 3 rounds of antibiotics every single winter, has extreme weight loss resistance, extremely low energy, and has bloating every single time that they eat. So I remember a while back getting this, and I said, man, you know what? I'm going to see probably so many different food allergies on here. And when we got it back, she only had 5. Only 5. Now, I've seen people who have had 40 different food allergies, but I've also seen people who have only had 3 or 4. And it didn't make a lot of sense when they were having these specific symptoms, and you thought, man, this person should have a lot of food allergies. But here's the problem. When someone has a very weakened immune system, you're actually going to see that their body doesn't respond to foods that they're supposed to be allergic to. Let me say that again. When someone has a weakened immune system, their immune system doesn't respond to foods that they're supposed to have an immune system response to. So the 2 biggest, or the 3 biggest things that can cause a lowered immune system response, let me give it to you, is going to be number 1, chemotherapy. Chemotherapy. So chemotherapy, when people are undergoing chemotherapy, it is knocking out and it's destroying that person's self-defense, their immune system. So that is the first thing, chemotherapy. So people who are undergoing chemotherapy have a severely weakened immune system, and they have to be concerned about specific viruses. The other thing that can also interfere with it is if they've had a previous cancer diagnosis. And let me explain to you why. If someone's had a previous cancer diagnosis, it means that there has been some level of failure of the immune system to be able to suppress that tumor. So they have a failure of the immune system as well. The third thing is immunosuppression medications. So medications that will suppress the immune system. Now, one of the biggest ones are going to be medications for autoimmunity. So if you look at some of the, like Humira, for example, if you look at these medications and you look at the warning signs, the side effects, they actually say that long-term use will increase your risk of having cancer, and it also will increase your risk of having infection. So immunosuppression medication, especially that are used for autoimmunity, are things that long-term are going to suppress your immune system. Now, there's also things that people are on, like steroid medications, that are going to suppress the immune system. And these are also for people who are taking steroid meds, like for asthma. So these will also, they're designed to suppress an inflammatory response. Now, guys, why aren't we trying to figure out what the triggers are to the inflammatory response versus just knocking out the whole entire immune system in one fell swoop? So when you look at this person only having 5 food allergies, I had to tell her, your immune system is having a really bad day. And you got to be careful about your exposure to specific viruses or bacteria. And you have to start working on rebuilding that immune system. So first one is a food allergy test. Next one is actually a stool test. Now, how on earth can a stool test, can that signal having a low immune system response? Well, I want to show you one thing that you look at. This is called secretory IgA, all right? Secretory IgA. Now, what on earth is IgA? Well, this is actually your first defense against having any kind of infection whatsoever. So IgA is immunoglobulins. They're antibodies. What antibodies do, the purpose of antibodies is that they will actually surround a virus, or they'll surround a bacteria and inactivate them, specifically for viral infections. So what they do is when they surround it, they inactivate this virus, and then they'll also secrete chemical hormones called the complement system, which will then draw and attract more white blood cells to actually clean up the damage. So we call this secretory IgA, and this lives literally with anything with any kind of mucus layer. Eyes, within your nose, within your throat, your esophagus, within your small intestine, within your large intestine, within the lungs. And what this secretory IgA is that it's really just the bouncers that are keeping an infection out of the bar. So we call these the bouncers in the bar, because they are the first line of defense between what is able to enter into the body. So some people have way too much of this secretory IgA, which a lot of times when people are having inflammatory bowel diseases, you'll see this go up. But one of the things is when you have things that are long-term, knocking down the gut, knocking down the colon, that are causing chronic inflammation, you're going to see this number right here, secretory IgA, actually start to go down. And so what that means is you have less bouncers that are able to keep out infections from entering in the internal environment of the body. So you need a healthy mucosal layer. It's called your innate immune system. No one is talking about your innate immune system. Everyone today is talking about the adaptive immune system and about antibodies to a virus. But that is actually not as important as having a healthy innate immune system response. Now, the next one is we'll call it a Dutch test. So the next one is a Dutch test. So what is a Dutch test? A Dutch test is a dry urine total comprehensive hormones. And this is probably the most complete way to measure hormone function inside of the body. So it measures all of your estrogens, progesterone, all the intermediaries, testosterone, DHT, all of the adrenal function, cortisol, all of these different hormone functions taking place inside of the body, including liver function. And when we start to see that a person's overall hormones start to go low, we know that their immune system is having a really bad day. And in fact, I'm going to give you an example, because this is called your circadian rhythm. So this is your cortisol pattern throughout the day. Cortisol is actually the stress hormone that allows you to wake up, helps to regulate your blood sugar throughout the day. And when you wake up, it actually should be right in the middle between these two black lines. It should spike at its highest in late morning, early afternoon, and then it gradually starts to tail off through the late afternoon all the way, and it should be at its lowest at night, so that you can actually calm down, relax, and be able to sleep. If you look at this person's right here, you actually will see that this person has low cortisol all across the board. So you can see that her adrenal glands, for whatever reason, aren't producing enough of this stress hormone. So here you have this person who's always tired, who is having some problems with infections, with joint pain, with her body's ability to be able to heal. Just everything was just so depressed. Everything was so low. And in fact, this person actually had a big time problem, and it was causing that whole immune system to tank. And she had a problem with mold. So she had a mold exposure about 25 years before. It became persistent. She couldn't clear it out of her body. And so you could see an overall lowering of her immune system response. So this is why people with chronic mold issues, why they have so many problems with infections. They have problems with their kidneys, their gastrointestinal system, brain fog, joint pain, and it will be a stressor to the immune system. And as that immune system gets stressed, you're actually, as a response, as an adaptation, you're going to see low stress hormones, and you're also going to see low overall hormones, estrogens, progesterone, things like that inside of the body. So a lot of times people are saying, like, well, what is an immune system test that I can directly measure? Well, if you haven't gotten the next one I'm going to go over, if you go back and look at your other ones, you can actually see is do I have a low functioning immune system? And then here's the last one that I want to go over. And this right here, this is the granddaddy. This is the big daddy of all immune system tests. And in fact, I believe that this is a test, instead of everyone running out and getting some kind of COVID-19 viral test is that people should be getting this test every single year in order to measure their overall immune system response. And we call this the Wellness Way Immune System Panel. And this is actually a test that they run pretty routinely with people with HIV infections. And you might say, well, why are they actually running these HIV tests? Well, the reason why they run these specific white blood cell counts on people with HIV is because they know that they have a low functioning immune system. So when you look at this low functioning immune system, they're much more susceptible to have things like fungal infections, to die of viral infections, to die of bacterial infections. And in fact, most people who have an HIV infection, they don't die from HIV, they die from the result of having a low immune system response, whether it might be cancer, viral infections, fungal infections, yeast infections, or some kind of bacterial infection. So when you look at this, I want you to see the three main things that we look at when it comes to looking at your overall immune system, how that immune system is actually functioning. So the first one that you see right here is you see on the bottom your absolute natural killer cells. Now, these natural killer cells are part of your innate immune system. These are the first responders to any kind of infection, particularly a viral infection. And so these natural killer cells, what they do is they will immediately start to inactivate any kind of tumors or any kind of viral infected cells. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that when a virus needs a host and it goes into a cell and starts to infect the cell and it starts to replicate, your cell actually will change its membrane and it will put up a flag and say, hey, immune system, I have an infection here. You need to kill me so that this virus doesn't get out of control. And the first line of defense is your natural killer cells. So these natural killer cells you can see in this person, you can see how low these natural killer cells are, which means that when they have some kind of viral infection, they don't have a lot of cells to be able to start to kill that viral infection very quickly. So here's what happens, is that you have these CD4 helper cells. Now what happens is these CD4, they're called helper cells because what they do is they really stimulate other immune system cells. So they'll stimulate things like macrophages, which go ahead and they clean up the area that's infected. You have these B lymphocytes, which are designed to secrete antibodies to inactivate more of these viruses before they can enter into the cell. And so they also will stimulate these CD8 cells, which then come to the scene and then will destroy even more of these virally infected cells. So you see that you need these within right in the middle of this 30 to 61%, so that you know that you have immune system sufficiency. And then you have these CD8, which are called suppressor cells. These are the cells that destroy a cancer cell. These are the cells that destroy a virally infected cell. And when you don't have enough of these, like you see in this person, they're having a very bad day in their immune system. This means that they can have an increase in tumor load. This means that they're going to be much more prone to actually, when they get a viral infection, for it to grow and proliferate inside of the body. So this right here, should everyone get this test? 100%. Absolutely. Because this right here is a direct measurement of how sufficient your immune system is. See, this is what we're not talking about. We're not talking about whether a person has a sufficient immune system or not. We're not measuring whether someone has a sufficient immune system or not. What we're doing is we're taking every single person and we're saying, all of you, you have a weak immune system. Or all of you, you may have a strong immune system, but we need to protect those who have an immune system that might be weak. But we don't really know the people who have an immune system that might be weak because we're not testing them. And instead, what we're doing is we are shutting down a country in order to protect people that we have no idea whether their immune system is strong or not because we haven't properly tested them. So who thinks that we should have a different perspective when it comes to what we're going through right now? If you think that we should have a different perspective, do me a favor. Please like this and please share this with other people so that we start changing our culture in how we start to see the immune system and how we start to see how we need to start looking at infection and viruses from a different perspective. And here's the last thing that I want to go over with you is this. Don't fear a virus. Fear your inability to overcome it. So don't fear a virus. Fear your inability to overcome it. So when people ask me, Dr. Nate, are you scared of this virus? The thing that scares me the most is actually the repercussions of being in fear over a virus. So my question to you is this. What are you doing? What are you doing to produce a sufficient immune system response? What are you doing to produce a sufficient immune system response? And there's a lot of different things that you can do, but everyone's going to be a little bit different because according to tests, everyone will have, according to their tests, different things that are actually knocking down their immune system. So they all have different things that are going to knock down their immune system. Now, am I taking things right now in order to give my immune system sufficiency? Absolutely. Because I know that I probably come into contact with more people than the average person being an essential healthcare worker. But I'm not scared of the virus. So I work on my ability to overcome it every single day. So my question to you is what are you doing to produce a sufficient immune system response? Leave that in a comment below what you're doing to produce a sufficient immune system response. So I hope that makes sense. And if you guys have a couple of questions, I'll take a couple of questions right now, okay? So Ashley asks, how do you increase secretory IgA? Okay, well, it just depends on some of the things that can start to knock down the immune system within the colon. So this is why being chronically exposed to food allergies that are producing a chronic inflammatory response, that's certainly one thing. Another thing is not having sufficient acid within the stomach and within the intestines. That's something that can also cause increased bacterial loads, small intestinal bacteria overgrowths, yeast overgrowths, fungal infections. So the number one thing I would actually say to help to increase secretory IgA is to avoid your food allergies, if you know what they are, and then make sure that your intestines are properly acidified so that and then start to build up that mucosal layer. So if you're starting to have things with like a low secretory IgA, chances are that mucosal layer within your large intestine and probably your small intestine probably is not built up very good. I want you to remember something. All these people are saying, I'm taking probiotics in order to build up my immune system. We test people all the time when we stool test that are taking probiotics. And for many people, it doesn't make a difference. And the reason why is because they've actually have knocked down that mucosal layer within their large intestine. And that's actually where the microbiome actually lives. So you have to restore that mucosal layer before you can start taking probiotics. So you start doing that, you will see that large intestine, that secretory IgA will become more resilient and it'll have the ability to be able to bounce back. Nancy says, exercise, healthy diet, and supplements. I agree, Nancy. That's a great place to start. And all of those things will help clinically to help give your immune system sufficiency. Nick, thanks for all you do and the help you give us all. Nick, it's my pleasure. Thanks for jumping on. So guys, thanks again for jumping on. And again, make sure that you share this. And also, if you are a member of Exemplify Healthy Families, which is our private Facebook group, make sure that you share this as well. When you share it, you're going to enter into our drawing, the drawing for a $100 resource credit that we'll be doing within the Exemplify Healthy Families group on Friday. So if you share that and you're within the Exemplify Healthy Families group, we'll be doing a drawing on Friday. Someone's going to get $100, and we're going to be doing it over the next 3 weeks. So during this month of April, while everyone is hoarding toilet paper, one of the things that we're doing instead is we're not hoarding. We're choosing to give back. We're choosing to give things away, even when it doesn't even make a lot of sense. All right. So guys, be well, enjoy the beautiful weather, and make sure that you like this, share this. We'll talk to you soon.